"Don't jump!" A black single dad cried out through the slicing wind, his hand clamped tight around the icy wrist of the girl teetering on the Brooklyn Bridge railing. His name was Marcus Carter. Pressed against his chest, Eli, his 2-year-old son, was curled inside the only dry coat left. "Don't jump," he repeated, pulling hard. The girl slipped, legs dangling, then was hauled back. Rain lashed sideways. Street lamps swayed behind mist. Midnight poured a silver chill over the city. Minutes earlier, Marcus had only been a worn-out man after another overtime shift, shirt plastered to his skin, shoulders aching from carrying his son through the storm. He walked with his head down, counting steps, thinking of rent, formula, the rattling heater. Then he saw her. A shadow standing outside the rail, barefoot, a thin dress clinging to her. Marcus's heart pounded wild. He rushed forward. "Wait!" His voice tore against the gale. She turned, her foot slipped, her body pitched toward the black void. Marcus lunged, snatching her wrist at the last instant. Momentum slammed his knee into steel with a crack that made him gag. Eli burst into tears. Marcus clenched his teeth, cradled his son tight, his other arm straining like a cable. Below, the East River frothed white. "Don't move," he shouted. "Rain makes it slick. I'll lose my grip." "Let me go," she rasped. "I can't take it anymore." "No, Eli's right here," Marcus gasped. "I know that hollow feeling, but ending it here isn't the way. I have no one," she sobbed. "I lost everything." "I lost too," Marcus said hoarsely. "I watched my wife die in the fire. I held my boy in one arm and felt the world fall from the other. But Eli pulled me back. You'll find a reason, too." He tilted so she could see the wet head nestled at his neck. "Please, hold on a little longer." Her body trembled. The arm in his grip twitched with instinct to live. Marcus scanned for leverage, decided in a single breath. He set Eli down on the slick walkway, tucking the coat over him, then threw all his weight into being an anchor. Inch by inch, he pulled. Once he slipped, she screamed, his palm burning raw. "Don't let go," he snarled. She kicked, her toe caught a rail edge. "Push off it." Marcus yanked hard, wrapping her waist over the barrier. They collapsed onto the platform, gasping. For a moment there was only rain and heartbeats. She curled in his arms. Eli crawled over, his tiny hand resting on his father's shoulder like a latch. "You're safe now," Marcus whispered. "You're not alone." "You saved me," she wept. "No, I just reminded you. You're worth saving." They staggered upright. Marcus draped his drenched coat around her shoulders. "What's your name?" "Ava," she murmured. "Ava Whitmore. I'm Marcus. This is Eli. We can't stay out here. Let's find shelter." They traced the bridge to a bus stop awning. Ava slumped onto the bench, shivering with exhaustion. Marcus soothed Eli while glancing at his swollen knee. He raised a hand for a cab, but the thought of his damp, moldy room made him shake his head. "I'll take you to a friend," he said. "He's good people." A door on a ground-floor flat swung open. Joe Miller, retired EMT, stood there, eyes worried but never prying. He looked at the soaked girl in a man's coat, the toddler clinging to his dad's neck, then nodded and stepped aside. "Towels here, heaters on, tea's in the kitchen." Ava perched on the couch edge, fists knotted in terry cloth. Eli toddled over, dark eyes solemn. "You cold?" He tugged the little scarf from his own shoulders, breathed warm air on it, then pressed it against her chest. She froze, then let out a hoarse laugh. "Thank you, young man." Marcus, watching from the doorway, felt his chest tighten. His son, though deprived, still knew how to give. Chamomile hissed in an old kettle. Marcus carried 2 chipped mugs, set one before Ava. She cupped it in both hands, letting steam stroke her face. "You should take back your coat," she murmured. "You need it more," Marcus said. "That's your only coat, isn't it?" Silence. Enough of an answer. Joe withdrew to his room, leaving a circle of warm light. Eli already slept, breath steady. Ava set her mug down, voice low. "Why did you help me?" "Because I was helped once," Marcus said, gaze fixed on the shadowed bookshelf. "When everything collapsed, someone came, sat with me, brought soup, held Eli so I could breathe. I never forgot." "I thought love meant being needed," Ava whispered. "But to my father, love was being useful." Marcus looked at his son, then at her. "Love means staying, especially when it's hard." The night folded in. They asked no more, just sat, listening to the heater to heartbeats slowing. In the corner, the drenched coat lay under lamplight, like a soaked flag of kindness raised in the storm. The night at Joe's felt like an old blanket, not pretty, but warm. The steam of chamomile tea spread a thin layer of calm over the storm that had just passed, enough for two people to sit and breathe. Marcus spoke slowly. "I used to be a firefighter." One night, Sarah called. "I smell smoke. I'm taking Eli downstairs." Then, silence. By the time I got there, the third floor had collapsed. My crew dragged me out. The report said, "Smoke inhalation, quick and peaceful." But nothing was peaceful. He paused. "I left the force. Moved into cheap rooms, took any job, plastering, sweeping, cold storage, anything to keep Eli fed. Guilt sits like a stone in my chest, and every day I have to carry it." Ava pulled Eli's little scarf closer to her neck. "My mom died when I was 16. My father, Henry Whitmore, locked his heart and left only work and legacy. I wanted to paint. He called it useless. At 19, he arranged my engagement to Derek Lang to strengthen alliances. I resisted. He said, 'Leave this house and you lose everything.' I ran to the bridge because my mom once told me standing between two shores brings peace. But tonight, when I stood on the rail, all I felt was emptiness." "You're not invisible," Marcus said, locking eyes with her. "Tonight you were seen when you chose to hold my hand." He raised his scraped, bleeding hand. Ava touched it lightly, whispering, "This hand saved me." "This hand only reminded you to live," Marcus corrected. "The choice was yours." Joe poked his head out of the back room, dropped off extra blankets, then left them alone. The heater breathed evenly. Ava hesitated. "I always thought love meant being needed. To my father, love meant being useful." "That's a contract," Marcus said. "But love is staying. Joe stayed with me when I only knew how to breathe. I'll stay with Eli, and, if you allow, with you." Ava let out a faint laugh. "You were still soaked and cold, yet you gave me your coat. You needed it more. That was your only coat." "Yeah." "You're a fool." "Maybe," Marcus smiled, "but I want Eli to grow up knowing warmth is something worth sharing." They sat longer. Ava looked at Eli, lashes heavy in innocent sleep, and suddenly her heart softened. But fear returned. "Tomorrow, my father will come. The press will swarm. I'm afraid I'll fall again." "Tomorrow's always bigger than we think," Marcus answered. "But you won't be alone. You can stay here for now. Joe's got a spare room." From inside, Joe's voice rumbled a simple, "Yes." Ava nodded, shoulders loosening. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to be tired. Marcus tucked the blanket around Eli, then leaned back on the creaking fabric chair. The ache in his knee echoed the crack of the stormy night, but it felt lighter now, because someone had chosen to stay with herself. Dawn crept in. The living room clock struck 5. Gray light filtered through the curtains. Marcus stirred when Eli rolled over, calling, "Daddy." He hushed him, then turned to ask Ava if she wanted breakfast, but froze. The chair was empty. On the table lay Eli's scarf, neatly folded, a drained teacup, and a slip of lined paper. The handwriting was soft but firm. "Thank you for not letting go, for reminding me I'm still human. I need to try standing on my own. I'll be okay. A." Marcus stood silent. Outside, a streak of light split the clouds. Eli rubbed his eyes. "Where's Miss Ava, Daddy?" "She needs to go for a while." Marcus held him close. When someone just steps back from the edge, they need to know their legs can still hold. "Will she come back?" Marcus never promised what he couldn't keep. "I hope so. But whether she does or not, last night she chose life. That's already a miracle." He slipped the note into his wallet beside Sarah's photo holding Eli, an old bus ticket, an unpaid power bill, proof of endurance. Then he cleared the cups, folded blankets, wiped away the last rain marks. The storm had passed. The ones who remained had to rebuild what had fallen. Today, he still had to work, still had to buy milk for Eli. But now he had a new task: to keep the words, "You're still worth saving alive," longer than one night. On the way to daycare, Marcus looked up at the Brooklyn Bridge. The river's morning face lay smooth, as if it had never raged. He squeezed his son's hand. "Some bridges don't just connect two shores," he said. "They connect people to people." Eli didn't fully understand, but nodded, clinging tighter. At the job site, Marcus signed up for an extra shift. His knee still throbbed, but he chose to keep working, because no child is raised on pretty promises. People are raised on soup bowls, rent paid on time, and presence that doesn't run away. Somewhere else, a young woman faced her mirror and whispered, "I'm still worth saving," before stepping out to fight her silent battle against family and invisible locks. Sunrise never offers full answers. It only lays a streak of light to step on. Marcus held Eli's hand and followed that streak, carrying in his wallet a note strong enough to stitch together a new day. Winter slammed into Brooklyn like a door caught in the wind. Work was scarce, coal prices soared, and the heater in Marcus Carter's rented room sometimes wheezed like an old man's lungs. He took anything he could: plastering, hauling frozen crates, scrubbing moldy basements. And at night he still told Eli stories, even with a throat raw from fatigue. When he hung up his coat, his hand often went to his wallet, where Ava's note was pressed flat. "Thank you for not letting go." Some days it was a charm. Other days, a blade, because maybe she had already drifted out of his life like rain past the bridge. One February morning, the sky was blank white like an unwritten page. On the second level of scaffolding, Marcus braced himself, tightening bolts, his glove torn just enough for his fingernail to touch steel for grip. "Watch bolt number 7, it's rusted," an older worker warned. Marcus nodded. He tested the hold, a thin groan, then a snap. The ground tilted. Metal screamed. A fall short in distance but long as a whole winter. His back slammed, ribs seared. Everything broke apart into white light and the sting of antiseptic. When he woke, the ceiling stretched flat like an empty page. The heart monitor beeped steady as a patient clock ticks. The nurse said, 4 cracked ribs, a fractured wrist, mild concussion. Joe Miller had taken Eli in. "The boy calls for Daddy in his sleep," Joe murmured, then placed a toy car in Marcus's palm, Eli's gift, "so Dad won't be scared." Marcus smiled, pain racing his ribs. The first day blurred like cotton. The second, he drifted in and out, faintly catching footsteps, wheels of gurneys. On the third morning, the door opened. A strip of light fell from the hallway. A soft voice. "Marcus?" He turned slowly, as if turning the whole winter with him. Ava stood there, tall, slender, coat the color of cream, hair tied back, arms holding a bouquet of blue hydrangeas. That blue gave the white room depth. "I thought," Marcus began, but pain tightened his ribs. "I know." Ava's smile trembled as she set the flowers into a plastic vase. "I saw your name in a small article about the worksite accident. I came right away." She pulled a chair close, folded her hands together like someone fighting the tremor of a runaway heart. Then she drew a breath, like a diver before plunging deep. "There's something I didn't tell you that night. My full name is Ava Whitmore." She stopped, looked straight at him. "Henry Whitmore is my father." Marcus blinked, half from pain, half from the news yanking him out of balance. Whitmore, the Whitmore of towers, rankings, magazine covers? Ava nodded, smiling with a trace of irony. "The Whitmore heavy enough to smother me. I grew up in a world where image was everything, and emotions were stains to be scrubbed out." She brushed the bedsheet. "That rainy night you had nothing, except a child and a decision not to let go, and still you saw me. I never forgot." Marcus turned away to swallow the knot in his throat. "You don't have to. I want to," Ava cut in, rare certainty in her tone. "Let me stay, at least for these days when you can't lift your son without wincing." In the days that followed, before each dawn, Ava was there. She brought chicken soup she'd learned over the phone from an old cook. She bought a cushion to keep Marcus's knees aligned. She didn't speak much, quiet as the chair by his bed. When Eli visited, clutching Joe's coat pocket, he inched forward, set his toy car on his father's stomach, then leaned close to whisper to Ava, "Are you the Miss Ava from the bridge?" Ava nodded, eyes glistening. Eli leaned further. "You came back." On afternoons without doctors, Ava spread out the hospital bills, frowning at the numbers. Marcus cleared his throat. "Leave it. I'll pay them off." "Marcus, I know." His voice low but firm. "I owe, I pay, not to prove anything to you, but to keep my back straight in front of Eli." Ava closed the ledger, her hand pressing it shut like a door at the right moment. That evening, when she left, a crumpled envelope had slipped into her sketch folder. $45 and a note. "For the hospital, I'll pay the rest, piece by piece. Promise." "M," she cried soundlessly in the elevator. Not for the small sum, but for the hurried slant of words that preserved something rare in her world. Dignity. One morning, as snow drifted, Ava brought crayons and paper. Eli sat at the foot of the bed, drawing 3 stick figures. "This is Mommy, Ava. This is Daddy. This is me." The room went silent, as if the power had been cut. Ava bit her lip. Marcus coughed to mask the swell of emotion rising too quickly. When Joe took Eli home, the room shrank back to 2 people and the steady beeping. "I don't know if I'm ready for a name," Ava said, eyes fixed on the bed's corner. "But I know I'm ready to stay." Marcus looked at the ceiling, the fluorescent light trembling like a guitar string. "I don't have anything to promise except to stay and to learn not to let fear take the wheel, and maybe to learn how to accept help without feeling less." Ava stood, tugged the blanket up to his chest, the motion so soft even the fabric whispered. "Tomorrow I'll bring more soup," she said. "Not because you need it, because I want to." When the door closed, the faint scent of hydrangea lingered like a quiet vow. Here now. That night, Marcus slept his first deep sleep since the fall. In his dream, the Brooklyn Bridge no longer glared black with storm, but glowed pale in mist. A hand gripped. A hand refused to let go, and somewhere Eli's laughter rippled out like widening circles on water. Marcus left the hospital with a white band across his ribs and a brace on his wrist. The rooming house shifted into a new rhythm. Slow walks around the block in the morning, naps at noon, breathing exercises in the afternoon, story time for Eli at night, slow but clear. Ava came as steady as train schedules. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes with soup. Sometimes only to sit in silence and listen to Eli's pencil scratch the paper. What she never told him was that she had quietly paid most of the hospital bill. She didn't want to strip Marcus of the right to pay his debt his own way. And just as she expected, once a week a small envelope appeared in the kitchen drawer. $60, $20, some weeks only $12.35 with coins rattling, always with the same note. For hospital bill, I'll pay little by little. M. The fifth time she opened one, Ava pressed her hand to her mouth not to cry. She knew he wasn't paying her back. He was paying himself, preserving the backbone of dignity he wanted to teach Eli not through lectures but through actions. On pale afternoons, they took Eli to the park. Ava pushed the stroller. Marcus walked beside her, his braced arm forcing him to move slowly, and that slow pace let them hear the city more clearly. The scrape of shoes on pavement, the hawker's call for coffee, Eli's laugh startling pigeons. "Do you ever think about starting over?" Ava asked under budding branches. "Every day," Marcus said, "but it's hard when the past still sits under your skin." "If I could," Ava said carefully, "I'd open a small studio for people who've seen too much. Not fancy, just quiet enough." "Sounds right for you," Marcus smiled. "And you?" "A patch of grass where Eli can run barefoot, and maybe someone to tell the day back to." The glance between them was warm as sunlight. That evening, Eli sprawled on the floor and drew another stick figure. "This is Mommy Ava," he said plainly. Marcus froze. Ava inhaled. The room contracted for a beat, then softened with a trembling smile. She stroked Eli's hair. "Thank you for the drawing, champ." When Eli ran off for another crayon, Marcus joined Ava in the kitchen, the smell of tomato soup between them. "I don't want," he began. "I know," Ava said, eyes on the pot's gentle boil. "I don't want to rush a name either, but feelings are hard to fake." Marcus nodded, hand on the worn counter. "Yeah. Real feelings should just stay real." The next day, the dirty storm hit without warning. A tabloid photo, Ava holding Eli at the boarding house door, shot from low angle, hallway light making their eyes red, splashed across headlines. Ava Whitmore. Living with single dad in Brooklyn. Then came the clipped video with dramatic music. Then sneering comments. "She's funding him? Family rebellion stunt?" Knocks at the door thickened. Camera flashes cut through thin curtains every night. By the third afternoon after the first article, 2 men in black suits arrived. "Miss Whitmore," the taller one said, voice fangless but cold as steel, "Mr. Henry requests your immediate return. We guarantee your safety." Marcus stepped half a pace forward. "She's not property for you to guarantee." The man didn't look at him. "If you refuse, Mr. Whitmore's attorneys will proceed." Ava glanced at Marcus, apology in her eyes, then turned back. "I'll go, but I'll come back." The door closed. The real storm began. That night, Marcus's old files were dredged up. A blog claimed he had abandoned his post in a fire. An anonymous account smeared him as violent-tempered. His phone stayed silent. 3 jobs on hold. At the corner store, people pointed. Eli tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, Where's Miss Ava?" Marcus crouched eye level, swallowing hard. "She's busy for a little while, son." Across town, the Whitmore penthouse mirrored the whole sky. Henry paced before a long table. "You don't know what you're doing, Ava. You're dragging the Whitmore name through mud. That man is only leeching you." For the first time in that house, Ava stood with a straight spine. "You don't know me, Dad. You only know my utility. I'm not a shareholding." A crystal glass smashed on stone, sharp as judgment. "From now, grounded," Henry said coldly. "Phone, internet confiscated. You need clarity." Night dropped like a heavy curtain. The door locked from the outside. Ava sat on the old teenage bed, staring at the ceiling, where once she'd stuck glow-in-the-dark stars, and knew that now light had to come from her chest. 3 days later, rain returned. At 3:12 a.m., a gray figure flickered on security cameras. Ava, in a hoodie and jeans, backpack light, slipped down the fire escape like someone who knew her exits. She ran, heart drumming, never looking back. Marcus was dozing in a chair, Eli asleep across his lap, when urgent knocking rattled the door. He unlatched. Ava stood there, hair wet, eyes burning defiance. "If you still want me here," she said, "I'm back." "I stepped away from money, the Whitmore name, safety, but not from you and Eli." Marcus pulled the door wide, no speeches. His arms opened. Eli stirred. "Miss Ava?" "I'm here." Ava kissed his tangled hair. "I'm back." Outside, tabloids still stormed. Inside the damp rooming house, the storm hushed. 3 of them sat on the floor, leaning into each other, listening to the rain and their own heartbeats, as if hearing a new promise, to stay. And tomorrow, no matter how many headlines came, they could still brew tea, open the window, teach Eli to tie his shoes. Small rituals the storm could never touch. That morning, Ava Whitmore walked into the law office like a clean slash across the gilded canvas of the Whitmore name. Black t-shirt, jeans, flat shoes, braided hair, no makeup. The line of attorneys rose, leather chairs creaking. At the head of the table sat Henry Whitmore, gray suit, face like stone. "I came to sign," Ava said, voice so calm it was unreadable. "Sign what?" Henry set his pen down. "To renounce the trust, the shares, every inheritance." The air tightened in every chest. Henry's voice ground low. "You're angry. Don't hand your life to a whim." Ava met his eyes. "I'm not giving up. I'm choosing." The pen touched paper, the scratch loud as scissors through satin. Ava placed Derek Lang's engagement ring on the polished wood, nudging it toward Henry. "I'm not stock in your alliance." Henry rose, his breath audible. "You walk out of this room, you lose everything." Ava lifted her bag, turned her back. "No, I walk toward what's real." That afternoon, Ava tied on an apron at a small Williamsburg cafe. The smell of espresso wrapped around her. She learned tamping, pressing coffee flat as a still pond, steaming, raising milk to the thin hiss without froth, cleaning every gasket, every portafilter, smiling even when customers demanded perfect, heart-shaped latte art. At closing, she mopped until her shoes reflected in the floor. No more safety net, only hands and steady practice. At night, she spread sketches beside Marcus Carter, the black man whose ribs still ached, wrist half freed from its brace. Eli lay between them, passing crayons to each hand. "What if we opened a little place near the Brooklyn Bridge?" Ava dotted paper. Warm lights, a reclaimed wood bar, a corner armchair for anyone who needed to sit long, waffles with cinnamon. Marcus penciled costs, deposit, refurbished espresso machine, string lights, second-hand tables. "What's the name?" Ava asked. Eli looked up, eyes bright. Second chances. The two adults exchanged a glance, as if the storm itself had whispered the name. A retired brownstone owner, Mrs. Alvarez, agreed to lease the ground floor. Deposit due Friday. They emptied wallets, counted bills. Short. Ava said, "I'll work extra shifts." Marcus nodded. "I'll take lighter jobs." Joe Miller arrived with a toolbox. "I can wire outlets," he grinned, patting Marcus's shoulder. Day one of renovations. Bare brick emerged under flaked paint. Sunlight sliced through dust like thin knives. Marcus stripped old pallets, planed them smooth, built a bar with grain like waves. His wrist burned, but focus dulled the pain. Ava painted walls, one honey brown, one storm gray. Eli, in the corner, colored a sign, "Second chances," adding a wobbly bridge full of hope. Thursday night, deadline looming, they counted again. Still thousands short. They had pooled everything. Shifts, tips, Marcus's old wedding watch sold. Joe's pension this month, I'll eat instant noodles. Ava's smile wavered, eyes wet. "We can't take that, Joe." "I've been with you since the start," he barked. "Don't rob me of helping." The door opened. A man in a gray suit stepped in, sat at the last table, ordered an Americano, brewed clumsily in a borrowed mocha pot since they weren't open yet. He didn't glance around. He only watched Ava bent over frames, Eli planting crayons in her hand, Marcus measuring the same plank again. When the cup was empty, the man rose, slipped an envelope into the glass jar labeled in Ava's handwriting, "Pay what you can, Days," gave a slight nod, and left. Ava never looked up. That night they opened the jar, hoping for enough coins to buy string lights. Between the clink of quarters lay a folded check. Fine green ink. For her colors, H. Ava's hand shook. Marcus stood silent. Joe whistled low. No Henry, only an H, but all of them knew. Ava sat down, tracing the edge of the paper like the edge of a softened memory. "He saw me." Marcus laid a hand on her shoulder. "That's a gift, not a leash. You can take it, if that's how he learns love." Morning. They carried the deposit to Mrs. Alvarez. She signed, pen dotting the contract with a toothless smile. "I like your cafe's name." By afternoon, string lights hung like low constellations. Joe wired outlets. Marcus varnished the bar. Ava taped up black and white prints hot off the press. The bridge in rain, hands clasped. Eli paraded with his wax crayon sign like a lantern. On the eve of opening, Ava flipped the switch. Second chances glowed soft on the glass. All four stood on the sidewalk, silent as if listening to the last note of a song. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, "we open." Ava nodded, eyes damp, her hand clasping his for 1 second, then releasing, enough to say thank you without words. In the dark, after lights out, the check for her colors H rested in the small safe. Not because they needed more money, but because it was the first document Henry had ever written in Ava's language. Color. Not orders, not numbers, not conditions. Just a look, a hidden signature, not to reclaim control, but to release it. Tomorrow they would open the door, but tonight the cafe wasn't a cafe, it was a vow. Whoever walked in, empty-pocketed or heavy-hearted, would hear the same word, stay, and stay, from now on, was their definition of love. On that first morning, the wind off the East River carried a faint salt smell into the street. Second chances opened with a small chime. Marcus had fixed it to the doorframe just because Eli loved the keng-keng. String lights glowed warm. The polished wood counter shone as if lifted straight from the riverbed. Ava set a vase of blue hydrangeas in the sunny corner. Joe double-checked the breaker box. Eli, in his tiny apron, toddled around. "Would you like coffee, sir?" The morning crept slowly. A student came in to study, paid with coins and a quiet thank you. A taxi driver asked for a strong black to stay awake, and slipped an extra 5 into the pay-what-you-can jar. An elderly widow clutched her late husband's jacket, sitting long by the window. Ava brought her warm water, no charge. By noon, cinnamon waffles scented the room like good memories. Marcus's Americanos steadied. Ava's latte hearts were uneven but true. That afternoon, Ava taped a sign to the brick wall. "Thursday Circle. Everyone has a seat." At 6 p.m., 9 chairs formed a ring. Marcus sat near the door so latecomers could find the way. Joe brewed a pot of tea. Ava opened. "Tonight, no one corrects anyone. We only stay with each other's stories." A freshman spoke of secret panic attacks. A single mother of the day the bank's red notice arrived. A former firefighter whispered, "Survivor's guilt." And Marcus felt it press into his own fogged ribs. When her turn came, Ava said, "A year ago, I stood on a bridge rail. In the rain, a stranger with a child in his arms held my hand. I lived. If anyone here tonight feels they're in that place, please don't let go. Here, we don't let go." A student raised his phone to record, not for clicks, but to remember. Ava glanced through the window. The Brooklyn Bridge hovered faint, like a witness. At closing, as people left, a man in a gray suit, maybe him, maybe not, rose from the back table, stepped to the jar, and slid in a white envelope. He touched the glass with one finger, as if pausing to hear his own heart, then walked out. Ava, jotting notes for the next session, never looked up. Marcus saw the retreating figure, his chest sinking half a note, caught between suspicion and gratitude. Inside the envelope, a sponsorship certificate. Second Chances Foundation, enough to cover counseling sessions for those who couldn't afford them. At the bottom, Whitmore, Anonymous. Ava's vision blurred. No instructions, no conditions attached, only the capacity to add a 10th chair. But peace doesn't come without noise. The next night, an old smear piece on Marcus resurfaced, sneering that he's living off pity. Ava didn't rage online. Instead, she posted a new sign. "Tonight, tell of the debts we've paid that no one saw." The circle was larger than usual. Marcus offered no defense. He spoke of the $12.35 envelopes and the feeling of keeping my back straight before Eli. A stout man stood, dropped his own electric bill into the jar. "I'll pay it off, thanks to you all." Applause rose. Not loud, but steady, like heartbeats. The following day, inspectors came early. A wire behind the bar was frayed. Joe frowned. Instead of panicking, Marcus asked for 5 minutes, cut the power, and Joe replaced the cable in front of the official. "You know your priorities," the inspector admitted, signing off with a stroke. What could have been disaster became proof of what they preached. Safety and staying. Saturday, the cafe was unexpectedly full. Someone online had written, "Here it smells of cinnamon, and sorrow has a seat." People came curious, stayed for the refuge. Eli learned to set cups on trays without spilling. Each success earned him smiles from Marcus and Ava. A young couple lingered at the photo wall where Ava had hung a letters never sent corner. Notes layered. "I'm okay, Mom." "I learned to cook porridge for our baby." "Thank you for not letting go of me." Toward evening, honey light pooled on brick. Ava sat on the window ledge, hands around a ceramic cup. Marcus, apron dusted with flour, sat beside her. The silence was good, the kind that doesn't make anyone feel alone. "I've wondered," Ava whispered, If that night you hadn't been there, Marcus shook his head, you'd still be here. I just reminded you at the right time. Ava smiled. Then remind me again tomorrow. Outside, the Brooklyn Bridge cut dark lines against the sky. Inside, string lights blurred like a low constellation. The bar warm with handprints, the pay-what-you-can jar gleaming with coins. In a small frame, the anonymous certificate read, Whitmore, in letters so tiny you had to lean close, enough to be seen, but not to dominate. Night folded down. Marcus clicked off the lights one by one, leaving only the chalkboard sign where Eli had scrawled stay, but forgotten an accent mark, Oli. Ava wiped the board, added the missing mark, Oli. They looked at each other, smiling softly. Sometimes love is only adding the right mark, so a promise can be read in the dark. And tomorrow, like every tomorrow, the little bell on the door would ring again, king, king, to welcome new stories stepping back from the edge, looking for a seat where no hand lets go. That afternoon, the New York sky was as clear as freshly wiped glass. The East River wind cool enough to make the string lights tremble under the Brooklyn Bridge. They chose 3:12 p.m. for the ceremony, a quiet code for the hour Ava had opened her own door at 3:12 a.m. to come back. Marcus Carter wore a simple navy suit, its cut fitting the shoulders of a man who had carried weight and then laid it down. Ava Whitmore walked barefoot on a path lined with wildflowers, her white dress falling like mist. In her hands, a bouquet of blue hydrangeas, the color of the day she appeared at the hospital, the color of staying. Along the aisle were familiar faces. Joe Miller leaning on the chair arm, his eyes wrinkled in laughter. Mrs. Alvarez in her knit cap, clutching a worn leather purse. The old crew from Marcus's construction site. A few of Second Chance's first customers. Eli wore a tiny suit, shiny shoes, holding the ring pillow with both hands, solemn as a diplomat. The music began, just a violin and a guitar. Ava stepped slowly, each pace pressing the storm-soaked nights into firm ground. When she reached him, Marcus extended his hand. The same hand that once pulled her back now steady to hold. They turned toward the officiant, a minister who had once sat in their Thursday circle, voice low and warm. Here, the minister said, beneath a bridge once thought to mark an ending, you choose to make it an entryway. Today is not only a vow between two people, but a ritual of healing for anyone still standing between two shores. Marcus unfolded a small sheet, though he knew every word by heart. Ava, his voice thick with heartbeat. On that rainy night all I had was Eli in my arms, and an instinct not to let go. You taught me staying isn't endless endurance, but showing up. When the dawn is cold, when the bills arrive, when old fears press fingers into my chest. I promise, before this bridge, before my son, before these witnesses, I will stay in the simplest sense. I will be present. I will remind us to breathe when the past comes close. I will accept help when I need it, so strength won't become solitude. This hand once kept you from falling. From now on, it will hold, not to grip, but to walk with you. Ava smiled with her whole eyes. She held no paper. Marcus, you are kindness in concrete form, a single coat shared, envelopes paid in scraps, a chair for stories that don't fit neat. I once thought love was being useful. You taught me love is staying. I promise to stay in your language, soup when you're tired, paint when walls fade, calling fear by name so it can't hide in shadows. I promise not to make love into control, not to make care into chains. And when someone asks why I keep drawing bridges, I'll say, because bridges join two sides, like you joined me back to myself. Eli cleared his throat with theatrical seriousness, holding up the ring pillow. Joe and half the guests burst out laughing. Marcus and Ava bent down together. Eli whispered just for them, "These rings can't fall, okay?" "They won't," Marcus said, tapping his son's nose. They slid rings on as applause rustled with the wind through the lights. "I declare," the minister smiled, "before the bridge, before the sky, before those who stayed with you, you are family." Applause swelled. Ava lifted her face. The last sunlight slid across her lashes, reflecting a glint of wetness. The small reception was held at second chances. The polished bar, golden string lights against brick, cinnamon waffles hot from the iron, smelling like borrowed childhood. Someone played soft jazz. Another leaned close with congratulations. Conversations weren't about diamond carrots or honeymoons, but about evenings over sinks of dishes, milk money and rent, the joy of watching a child run without falling. In the crowd, a silver-haired man entered. Henry Whitmore, gray suit, tie loosened, his face stripped of the hard edges seen in newspapers. He paused at the doorway for a beat, as if testing the depth of this room, then stepped in. Eli reached him first. The boy looked up, saw the small brown paper-wrapped gift in Henry's hand. "For the brave ring-bearer," Henry said, voice imperfect but sincere. Eli tore the wrapping quick as thunder. Inside was a slim book, its cover painted with a bridge and 3 figures holding hands. Title, Second Chances. On the first page, handwritten in firm strokes, "For Eli, the child who knows how to share warmth." H. Ava stood behind her son. Her eyes met Henry's, both unguarded for a breath. "I thought legacy was buildings," Henry said, voice sanded softer. "But what you've made here, a place where people can stay, that's what stands." No scripted apology, none needed. Recognition had arrived first. Ava nodded, eyes wet. "Thank you for speaking in my language," she whispered, touching the book's edge. Henry nodded faintly, stepped back, not taking anyone's place in the frame of happiness. Before leaving, he paused at the pay-what-you-can jar, slipped in a plain white envelope. No name, no mark, only a gesture clear enough. By nightfall, Marcus carried a yawning Eli, Ava resting her head on his shoulder. Through the window, the Brooklyn Bridge cut bold strokes against the sky. "If not for that storm," Ava murmured. Marcus squeezed her hand. "We'd still have found our way, just by another road." Ava smiled. "Whichever road we chose to stay." Marcus nodded. The word was no longer a vow, it had become habit, like switching off extra lights, packing Eli's extra coat, opening the door for new stories. The last light went out as the clock ticked 3:12 a.m., their private joke of timing. Outside, the bridge wind whispered like fine cloth brushing. Inside, 3 bodies slept side by side, in a small room with space enough for everything yet to come. The morning after the wedding, ordinary life knocked right on time. The coffee grinder jammed, the sink piled with cups. Eli spilled milk down his brand-new apron. Ava retied the straps for him, smiling. "It's okay. Spilling's allowed here." Marcus checked the fire extinguisher behind the bar, habit he never broke, and swapped the smoke alarm batteries on the schedule he'd penciled into his notebook. They kept staying through small things, wiping shelves, labeling the sugar jar, pouring free tea for a thin guest who looked like he hadn't slept all night. But the old veins of fear still twitched sometimes. Tuesday morning, a burnt smell rose. Ava had left the fryer on while serving. In a heartbeat, Marcus's past slammed back. Steel cracking, plastic melting, the radio screaming. His chest clenched. Yet instead of freezing like in those early post-fire years, he breathed 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, then gave orders in the calm voice of someone who'd worn turnout gear. Ava, cut the gas. Eli with me to the door, stand by Joe. He slid a lid over the pan, never splashing water, pulled it off the heat. The smoke shrank into a thin streak, like a typo just corrected. Ava leaned against the wall, pale. Marcus came close, not saying, "It's fine." He'd learned feelings have reason. He set his hand on her shoulder. "It happened. We handled it." "And it isn't that night." Ava nodded, her hand finding his, breath syncing with the present. Eli peeked out from behind Joe. "I'm not scared." "'Cause I got Dad." Marcus grinned, sensing an old hollow inside sealed by something warm. That afternoon, a long-haired boy in a hoodie slipped in, eyes red as if from his own storm. He ordered hot water, sat trembling in a corner. Ava set a small card in front of him. "If you're standing on an invisible ledge, stay here 10 more minutes. We'll stay with you." He looked up, lips moving, then burst into quiet, deep sobs. Marcus came over, not asking, "What happened?" but "What's your name?" "Noah," he whispered. Ava asked gently, "Want to call someone? A friend? Family? Or a support line?" He nodded. She handed him the landline, bought only for calls like this, and the directory of helplines taped beside it. Marcus brought hot cocoa with a marshmallow, Joe's secret nail in warm cocoa. During that call, Second Chances stayed silent. No whispers, no phones out. Staying sometimes meant holding still so the voice on the other end could be heard. When Noah hung up, he nodded. I'll make it to the meeting tonight." Ava smiled. "Good. Tonight there's a seat in the circle and a waffle waiting." Thursday evening, the circle was fuller than usual. Chalk on the wall read, "The things we fear and how we stay." People spoke of sirens that made their hearts race, elevators that made their palms sweat, news stories that dug up what they had survived. Marcus told of the burnt smell that morning. He didn't play hero. He explained breathing steady, covering the pan, not throwing water, and asking for help. His telling turned skill into survival. Ava shared how Whitmore emails still knotted her stomach. She and Henry had drawn boundaries. They would meet at the cafe, never the penthouse. Any support would go through the anonymous fund. No strings attached. "Setting boundaries," she said, "is one way of staying with yourself." At the end, Ava hung a new wooden board beside the letters never sent wall. "I stay because," people wrote with markers, "because of my 7-year-old daughter, because of my old dog Beans, because of an autumn I haven't lived yet, because I want to see what my heart can do when it doesn't run." Eli scribbled, "Because Bridge," and drew one with a smiling face. The next morning, a smear piece tried to tie Second Chances Foundation to money laundering. Henry read it. Instead of calling lawyers, as he once would, he came himself. No gray suit, no entourage. He sat on a low chair near the door, waited until the cafe quieted, then handed Marcus a file. Every receipt and record of the fund independently audited. "I'll let Ava decide if it's made public," he said. "I just don't want what you've built stained by what I once refused to see." Marcus nodded, taking it. "Thank you for staying in your way." That afternoon, Ava pinned a short note on the cafe board, not online. Second Chances Fund exists through small pockets and a few big ones. Every expense will be posted on the wall on the 1st of each month. If you want to look closer, sit down, have a drink, and look with us. People came. They read the lines. Payment for 2 hours of therapy a week. Drink vouchers for those strapped. Cost of a new fire extinguisher. A community learned to trust by transparency you could touch. That night, locking up, Ava caught a faint wisp of smoke lingering like an old shadow. She didn't chase it off. She stood beside it, named it, Memory. Then she turned to the kitchen, counted cups, checked the gas valve, rituals that filed the teeth off fear. Marcus lifted Eli, the boy's head on his shoulder, hands still ink-stained from the marker. "Dad," Eli murmured half asleep. "Tomorrow can I write, 'I stay because of Mom and Dad'?" Marcus kissed his hair. "Of course. And I stay because of you." Outside, the Brooklyn Bridge held its cables taut, carrying the weight of lives back and forth. Inside, the wooden board, "I stay because," thickened with crooked lines of ink. Some bridges are made of steel and rivets. Some are made of hands, teacups, and small promises, and tonight, under warm lights, that bridge pulled another shore closer. That night, after the latch slid shut, Second Chances was still as a pond. Eli had fallen asleep on the bench. Joe carried him into the back room. Marcus Carter sat at the wooden bar, a warm teacup before him and a blank sheet of paper. He wrote the name, Sarah. The pen stumbled, then flowed. I didn't let go. Not just my hand that rainy night, but the way I learned to breathe again, to cook porridge for Eli and to let someone named Ava walk in without pushing her away out of guilt to you. I didn't replace you. I only widened the room where you once lived, so now there is more light. He stopped, folded the letter, slipped it into the letters never sent corner. It wasn't farewell, it was an update. At the table by the door, Ava Whitmore also wrote, "Dear Dad Henry, I still draw bridges. I know you're not used to love without condition, neither am I. But I'm learning. If you want to stay, not with the Whitmore name but with the person, this door is open." She looked at her words, didn't sign. She slid the envelope, unsealed, beside the board. "I stay because," already thick with crooked lines of ink. Next morning, cinnamon scented the air as the cafe opened. Noah, the long-haired boy who had once trembled dialing a helpline, came in, sat in his old corner. He managed a thin smile. "I'll come to the circle tonight." Ava carried over hot water, set it down. She didn't say, "Stay strong," too heavy. She only said, "We're here." By afternoon, sudden rain fell, sharp, straight, like cables strung across the city. Marcus, wiping down the machine, dropped a slip from the letters never sent wall. He bent, read hurried handwriting. "Sorry. I thought I was stronger. I owe everyone a goodbye. Don't let go of anyone else the way you once didn't with me. N." His heart stopped a beat. Ava came, paled. "What time is it?" "Almost 7:30, Marcus answered. Noah had once said he walked the bridge when his head was heavy. If he slipped back, he'd choose rain. No more words. Joe stepped out, saw their faces, understood. "I'll call 911, report a suicide risk," Ava said, already lifting the landline. "You call the crisis hotline, so they alert Bridge Patrol." Marcus nodded, dialing, his voice strangely steady, the old instinct back at the right moment. Joe bent to kiss Eli's forehead. "Stay with me tonight, champ." The boy nodded, eyes dark and solemn as if he knew. Rain lashed their faces as Marcus and Ava hit the street. The Brooklyn Bridge loomed like a low dirge. They ran, not heroically, not recklessly, phones open, ears tuned to the dispatcher. Bridge unit notified. "If you see him, keep talking, maintain safe distance. Do not touch." "Understood," Marcus replied. A lone figure appeared at mid-span, outside the railing. Thin, drenched gray hoodie clinging to his back. Noah. Marcus stopped a few meters off, far enough not to corner him, close enough for voice to carry. "Noah," he called, not shouting, so rain wouldn't drown the human tone. "Tonight's rain's too heavy. Down there it's freezing. Up here it's just cold." Noah didn't turn. Ava set a thermos on the bridge deck, a warm point against cold iron. "Noah," she said, "you don't have to believe anything right now. But could you believe one warm sip, just one sip, then curse us if you want?" His shoulders shook. "I'm tired," Noah's words cracked through rain. "Feels like someone always sits on my chest." "I know that feeling," Marcus answered. "Like the night fire ate all the oxygen, I thought I couldn't breathe. But I still breathed here, not fast, not deep, just enough. We can breathe together." Noah's foot shifted. Marcus caught the slip, heart clamping. From afar came sirens, bridge patrol weaving through the storm. Ava's voice stayed steady. "We called professionals. They're better at this than us. Let's talk until they arrive." "And Noah, Marcus isn't coming closer. He's keeping distance, because your safety is the only measure right now." Noah sniffed, rain and tears mixing. "I feel ashamed." "No," Marcus shook his head, though Noah didn't look. "Shame means you still want to do right. Courage isn't never wanting to jump, it's standing here one more minute." Bridge officers arrived. A female sergeant crouched to Noah's eye level, speaking like a lullaby. Rain still lashed, but the panic softened like someone turning down the volume. At last, Noah shifted back inside the rail. Knees buckled, he broke into sobs. Not explosive, but flooding, like a dam opened properly so the valley wouldn't drown. The sergeant draped a foil blanket around him, nodded to Marcus and Ava. "Thank you, your voices kept him here." Back at the cafe, they didn't say much. Ava poured warm tea, Marcus stirred soup. Noah sat under the silver blanket, spoon cupped in both hands. "I'm sorry," he stammered. Marcus rested his hand on the chair back, not touching. "No apologies here, only tomorrow's." Ava passed him a small care bag, dry socks, a card with helpline numbers, and the words, "Don't let go, stay." He nodded. Midnight passed. On the wall, the letters never sent corner grew by one. "Thank you for not letting go of me again. N." Below it sat Henry's earlier envelope in the pay what you can jar, a few clipped lines. "I confused control with care. I'm learning silence as a way to stay. H." Next day, Marcus hung a new wooden sign by the door. "Lantern shift. Walk with lights." Not for anyone to play hero on the bridge, but 3 at a time, carrying soft flashlights, warm tea, and crisis contacts. Walking in the rain like low lanterns, reminding someone that in the wind's path there are still people here. Second Chances never became a rescue station. It kept the balance between ordinary and urgent. A cup of tea, a phone number, a steady presence. That stormy night slipped through like a final stitch through the last buttonhole. Before lights out, Ava looked toward the bridge, hazed in rain. "Don't let go" had once been Marcus's words to her. Now, it had become the cafe's creed. And tomorrow, who knew? It might be someone else's words, spoken to someone they love in the language of staying. A year after the wedding, June poured honeyed light across the red brick. In the morning, Second Chances hung a white cloth on the wall, painted by hand. Anniversary, walk, Bridge of Hope. No ribbon cutting, just a slow walk up the bridge at dusk, each person carrying a reason to stay, written on thin wooden slips, to be hung on the cafe board afterward. All day, customers came and went like a steady breath. The monthly transparency board was posted right at the entrance. Costs for 2 group therapy sessions a week, a new water filter, supply kits for lantern shift, paint for the walls after the rainy season. Henry Whitmore arrived early, no guards, sleeves rolled on his shirt. He sat by the door, quietly watching people read the board. sometimes nodding like a man reviewing his old habits. He dropped an envelope into the jar. For her colors, this time green. Ava teased with a frown. Green is hard to match, Dad. Then let your hand do the matching, he replied, pushing authority back where it belonged for the first time. By evening, the special circle opened on the porch. Joe read out names of volunteers, those who had once stood and stayed at the edge. Noah sat in the middle, hair neatly cut, hands wrapped around a cup of cocoa. When his turn came, he said, "I'm staying because I want to know what I'll do with this autumn, and because the small light of lantern shift came on just in time." Applause rustled, soft as rain on tin, quiet but steady. At sunset, the group walked up the bridge. No banners, no loudspeakers, just soft flashlights and warm cups of tea. Marcus walked beside Ava, Eli between them, his eyes curious on the taut cables like stretched strings. "Dad?" Eli asked. "What song is the bridge playing?" Marcus smiled, one with a chorus that says, "Stay." Ava paused now and then, chalking tiny hearts along the walkway edges, not lasting, washed by rain, but enough for someone passing to catch and smile. At midspan, where years ago Marcus had gripped Ava's hand in the storm, they stopped. No big ritual. Marcus drew out 2 envelopes, one to Sarah, one to the Ava of the rainy night, laid them by the steel column, then picked them up again. He didn't leave them behind, he carried them home, because the year had taught him farewells aren't always letting go, sometimes they are learning how to carry. Back at the cafe, Eli hurried to the wooden board, "I stay because," and wrote carefully, "because of Mom, Dad, and the bridge." Beside it, others wrote, "because of Thursday soup," "because I want to teach my son how to ask for help," "because someone named Jay smiled at me on the bridge." Ava looked at the layered lines like wood grain and felt another room open inside her chest. Night slipped into the cafe like an old friend, soft jazz, fresh cinnamon waffles. Henry stood in a corner, gazing at Ava's finished mural, one hand holding another, not tight, the small gap between fingers like a space to breathe. In the corner, Ava had written, "Don't let go. Stay." Henry nodded, eyes glimmering in a way he had never allowed in public. He turned to Marcus. "Have I called you Marcus yet?" Marcus smiled. "Start from next time." They shook hands, not as business partners, not as foes in truce, but as 2 men learning something new. Respect. Late night, the cafe emptied. Eli lay on Ava's lap, yawning. Marcus dimmed the lights, leaving only one string lit on the glass sign. Outside, the Brooklyn Bridge stretched like a bold signature on the sky. Ava whispered, "If you hadn't been there that night..." Marcus shook his head. "Then maybe someone else would have said, 'Don't jump,' and you'd still have stayed. My part was reminding you in time. Your part was choosing." Ava smiled, forehead on his shoulder. "And our part now is to keep the door open for the next one." They sat there, listening to spoons clink faintly somewhere, the wind brushing through cracks like silk cloth. Joe stepped out, coat on, hat pulled low. "I'm taking a lantern shift tonight for the anniversary," he said. "We'll bring cinnamon and phone numbers." Marcus nodded. "Stay warm, call if needed." Joe winked. "These days I listen to the kids." Just before lights out, Ava chalked a line on the board's edge. "If you think tonight is a period, try making it a comma. Read again tomorrow." Marcus read it, feeling the old storm night flow into a bridge toward the present. He carried Eli, still clutching the Second Chances book Henry had given, and whispered, "I stay because of you, because of your mom." because of the ones yet to walk through this door. Ava turned the lock, her other hand in his, not gripping, walking together. Outside, the Bridge of Hope, a name known only to their family and closest guests, still bore weight as always, carrying stories across. Inside, second chances slept, to open again at dawn, and greet a few more eyes that once looked down, now looking up. Somewhere in the city, someone wrote on paper, "I stay." And sometimes that alone was enough to change an entire day. The Brooklyn Bridge in this story was once the place where a girl thought of ending everything, but it became the symbol of a new beginning, love, family, and second chances. Marcus, Ava, and Eli proved that sometimes one hand refusing to let go is enough to change a life forever. And you, do you believe that each of us deserves a second chance? A chance to begin again? Share your thoughts below. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share with others, and subscribe so you won't miss more stories that move the heart.